Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Money Matters Top Tips for Success, where each and every day I bring on new business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and have them share their top tips for success with you. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, moneymatterstoptips.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Peter-john Byrnes on the line, and he's the VP of Networks and Infrastructure over at Elysium Technology Group. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
So excited to get into what you're doing over at Elysium Technology Group. But before we do that, let's get a little bit further into your background. So how did you get started in your career?
Through the side door, I think. I'm a technologist now, I think 30 years maybe. And I got through that, I got into that field through working on a PhD in English literature at the University of Virginia. Back in the early 90s, there were a bunch of libraries, Virginia's being one of them, that was interested in putting the great works of literature online. So you would take Moby Dick and you would make it, the web didn't quite exist then, it was SGML, not HTML sort of markup. And most universities were taking computer science graduate students and teaching them a little bit about Moby Dick. UVA did the opposite because they had a very strong background in textual editing, so they took PhD candidates in English literature like myself and taught us computer skills. And at the end of the day, one of those was actually a career, and one was not. So I went into technology, and it was just there was a brief period in the sort of mid '90s where incumbent technology companies knew that they needed to have something called a website, but they weren't exactly sure how that worked. At the time, I was working as a tech writer at Swiss Bank, and I built their first web server for them, and sort of it went on from there.
Wow, I love your story. You went to teach literature, or you went to study literature. You learned computers, and one was a career. I love your story. You're right. Like a lot of times, people will say, "Yeah, Adam, I kind of took a roundabout. I kind of like accident." And I'm like, and normally they're wrong. Like it's like, okay, I could see that happening, but yours, I'm sorry, and I mean it as a compliment, Peter. Like I mean it as a compliment. I'm like, what? But hey, kudos to the university for having that foresight, or putting you to work. One of the two, right?
Yeah, it was more putting me to work. If they had the foresight to know that they'd be draining their English department, they probably would have taken another path. But as it turns out, I mean, there was just this weird period in the 90s. I couldn't have the career I had now if I had started, say, 10 years later, because at that point it was back to we want people with computer science degrees. You know, I have no official formal training in computer science. I mean, I had a class in high school. I was just happened to be in the right place at the right time when people were willing to hire warm bodies that had the skills and not necessarily the pedigree.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, it was just this weird time. I mean, my wife is also now she started as a web developer and is now a large project manager for websites. You know, she was working on Virginia Woolf and I was working on Byron.
Wow.
So we're both putting our English degrees to good use, clearly.
Exactly. Let's switch it up a bit, Peter. I do want to get into what you're doing now over at Elysium Technology Group. So tell us a little bit more about the company.
So what Elysium is, this is the multi-syllabic elevator pitch. We are a software as a service that does post-trade capture for the Forex trading market, and I'll break that out so that it actually makes sense. Essentially, if you are a foreign exchange trader, a foreign currency trader, you normally have multiple what they call execution platforms, trading floors, essentially electronic trading floors that you use. And you also have multiple banks in which you store your money. And there are various strategic reasons for wanting, various execution platforms to give you a better price on this, and you get a better price on that. And also similar reasons for having multiple relationships with banks. You might get a better interest rate on yen at this bank, or they don't charge you fees for this currency at this other bank. So from my point of view, all of that is immaterial. You have multiples on one side and on the other. You can, if you want, log into each one of those banks and get a balance, just as if you had, say, a Wells Fargo and a Bank of America account. You could log into each one of those and get balances and get your trades. But then you have to consolidate it. And, especially if you were starting to move into high-frequency trading as a desk or something like that, it's a real pain to gather all that information together. That's where we come in. We don't have anything to do with execution. I'm not going to get into that arms race of, shaving milliseconds off to get the best trade. You do that on your own with vendors that are very at it. But when you're done, we have a pipe into your execution platform, and we collect your trades in our database, and then we send it out to whichever bank, whatever prime broker is the official term, you are storing that trade with. And then you have one consolidated live ticking dashboard in the middle. That's what we do. We essentially take all your pipes that you're trading on, and we spit it out to all the pipes that you have for your various financial relationships, and you have something in the middle that you can actually use, trade off of, and know that even if you're long $1 million yen here and short $1 million yen there, you're flat. And that's what we do.
Oh, that's awesome.
We've been at this for about, go ahead.
How long?
We've been at it for about 12 years. We actually started out as the technology group of a hedge fund. Our founding partners were people that were used to very sophisticated technology. They came out of, a large European bank, I'll put it euphemistically. And when they broke off on their own to do a hedge fund, they wanted first-class technology. Probably, honestly, more than they needed, but they liked it. They wanted to, fund that. So they grabbed a bunch of us from, who all have large bank pedigrees. And as it turned out, the technology was so good that other hedge funds and desks were looking sort of over the shoulders of our partners and said, wow, that's really great. Could we use that? And eventually we shuttered the hedge fund and we just became a technology company. And that was about
wow. So you became, I hear these stories all the time about somebody that they create a piece of software, they create a product, and it was to solve their own problem because something didn't exist quite the way they wanted it done. And I hear in industry to industry, from logistics to now, in this case, Forex and trading, and that the technology that they developed for themselves ended up being so good that by word of mouth, they end up shutting down the original business and then become a SaaS company. It blows my mind. I'm like, that is amazing. That's the total opposite of trying to, you're trying to solve your own problem. If you solved your own problem and now you can help others with the same thing, it blows my mind. That's amazing.
Right. Okay. The opposite of the way you'd want to found a business, right? I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like total.
Right. A business plan. Right. Now we completely backed into our business plan.
Wow, that's amazing.
We've been in business 12 years and managed to survive through, let's say, a few rocky times in the financial industry, and we're still here. So
anything? You have a pretty unique vantage point because you've obviously been in the business for a while. You've been in fintech before. I guess we would call it fintech, right? Basically. So
yeah, we're not. Yeah, right. That's a new term for doing.
Yeah, you've been in there before. Before it was even a term. So that being said, from your vantage point, anything interesting going on in the industry technology wise that you just kind of have on your radar that you think is interesting?
Well, I mean, part of what we've done, and this is not exactly cutting edge at this point, but we moved into AWS several years ago, somewhere around 4 or 5. That's what I want to say. And it was, and before that, we were again like just about everybody else in those days, based. We were at a colo site right near the airport, because no one cares about smell or sound near the airport. And from my vantage point, officially I'm vice president of, networks and infrastructure, but at my heart, I'm a sysadmin, right? That's where I started. And that job be a lot of dealing with hardware, talking to vendors, finding out what the new models were. There was a brief period in my career where I worked for a company called Edison Schools that put Linux servers in schools because the bandwidth in the early aughts was usually so bad at an elementary school that it made more sense to actually install a server on site and have it local on their local land for the kids to take tests or electronic testing than it was to actually have a website.
Wow.
And so that was a lot of installing. I think
for the younger kids listening right now, Peter, they're like, "What do you mean? You had to come to the school, and the school had its own its own server? No way."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
For the younger kids, they're like, "What is this guy talking about? Who is he?" Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, in those days, you had all the kids went to a lab and they all took a test, and they would kill the bandwidth in the entire school.
Wow.
And so that was, I did nothing but talk to IBM about what their new model was going to be and is that the right server for us and whatever. I don't know what hardware my applications run on any longer, nor do I care. I simply provision an instance at AWS. So I track finances, I track our costs much more now. But the things I used to deal with, but this is transformative for everyone who's sort of in my job. We used to there was all this staging hardware and installation of hardware and, turning over hardware when it was becoming too old and figuring out what to do with your hardware. And all of that has been eliminated. That's now a professional service that you pay for, and not that much. That I don't have to think about, machines anymore, except in a virtual digital sense, is really, utterly transformative in my industry. And then you can set up disaster recovery. It's not an afternoon's project, but if I want to create another load balancing web server, it's not difficult, and it used to be a real project that would take months. Now it's days.
Wow. Unbelievable. So that being said, Peter, so if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Elysium Technology Group, what's the best way for them to find out about it?
The best way is to go to our website, which is, and I apologize for the mouthful, Elysium Tech Group. Elysium is spelled Elysium. That is the Roman heaven that Maximus wanted to go to in Gladiator. Elysium Tech Group, TechGroup.com.
Fantastic.
And how to put it? It's there's a little bit of it's essentially a brochureware website. If you really are interested in what we're doing, hit the contact us button and we'll happily give it a demo.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Peter, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and taking us down memory lane with these servers. All great stuff, and teaching some of the kids listening to us right now, giving them a little history lesson. I love it. Of what fintech was before it was fintech.
Yeah. Right.
That's awesome. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave us some comments in the comment section below. Let us know if you remember those days. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And Peter, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, sir.